Hey everyone, and welcome back. I'm Rick Fussell and this is the Ingrain Workshop. In today's video we're going to be addressing the 800-pound grill in the workshop. And that's my plywood cutoff pile that I have back here by my horizontal hardwood storage area, which has worked out great. But my plywood storage leaves a lot to be desired. So in today's video we're going to be building a mobile plywood storage bin. That's coming up next here at the Ingrain Workshop. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is build the base for the wood storage bin. So what I've got is I've got two 2x4s that are 10 feet long, and I'm just going to square up one end, and then I'm going to cut one piece at 6 feet, and then that's going to leave me a 4-foot cutoff. So I'm going to do that to two of the 2x4s, so I'll have two 6-foot pieces and then two 4-foot cutoffs. I'll take the two 4-foot cutoffs and cut those down to 23 inches, and that will make the width of the base. So the length of the base is going to be exactly 6 feet or 72 inches, and then the width of the base is going to be 23 inches plus 3.5 plus 3.5, which is 30 inches. So the overall width of the base will be 30 inches. So now with my 6-footers cut, I'm going to cut the width pieces. They're going to be actually 3 because we're going to have one that we're going to place right in the center of the base. So we're going to need 3 2x4s cut down at 23 inches, and I'm going to make those cuts here at the miter saw. I've got my stop block set up at 23 inches, and we'll make these 3 cuts. Okay, so next here at my pocket hole workstation, I've got my pocket hole jig set up for 1.5 inch material because we're going to be drilling pocket holes into these 2x4s. So I went ahead and adjusted my jig accordingly. And now I'm just going to drill 2 pocket holes on each end of the wood piece, width pieces. And again, that's 3 width pieces that we've got to drill 2 pocket holes on each end. So the next thing I'm going to do is take my width pieces that I drilled the pocket holes in, and I'm going to take and glue up the end grain here, and then I'm going to take and clamp it down to the table and then screw it into the length piece, and I'm going to do that for all 3 width pieces, and then I'll tack on the last length piece, and that will make up our base. So next here at the table saw, we're going to take and cut out the base panel that's going to get screwed onto the base frame. And we're going to make that panel 72 inches long by 30 inches wide, and we're going to cut that here at the table saw. And I'm going to be using 1/2 inch plywood. I probably would have used 3/4 inch. I just ran out, and I did have a full sheet of 1/2 inch, so I am going to use a 1/2 inch for the base, but you could use 3/4 inches as well. Now with my DIY track saw guide and my saw, I'm going to trim off the edge of the plywood here at 72 inches. So the next thing I'm going to do with the base panel is I've got to connect it to the base frame, and I'm going to just pre-drill and countersink some 1¼ inch wood screws all the way along the perimeter and along the center profile. Next, using my DIY track saw guide and my saw, I'm going to rip 2 sheets of 3/4 inch plywood down to 72 inches or 6 feet. So now with both sheets of our plywood ripped down to 72 inches or 6 feet, so the first cut we're going to make here at the table saw is at 14¼ inches, and that's going to be for the front skirt. Next, with my fence adjusted to 8 inches, we're going to rip the lower long shelf. Next, I've moved my miter saw or my table saw fence to 7 inches, and we're going to rip the mid lower shelf. Now with the table saw fence at 6 inches, we're going to rip the back skirt. Now at 4½ inches, we're going to rip the upper long shelf. Now with our 4-foot cutoff from our original sheet of plywood, I've got my fence set at 4 inches, and we're going to rip the vertical rails, and there's going to be 4 vertical rails. So with the 2-foot cutoff from my second plywood sheet, I'm going to take, with my table saw fence set at 9 inches, go ahead and rip 5 vertical dividers. They're going to be 5 inches by 23. This cutoff happens to be 24 inches, but I'll come back after the fact and rip it down to 23. So that's it. I now have everything cut out that I need to assemble the project. The next thing I'm going to do is assemble it. However, I've got to order some casters, and they're not due from Amazon until tomorrow. So this is about as far as I can get. Once I get the casters, we'll get them assembled onto the base, and then we can start assembling the storage bin. But if you like the video, you like what you're seeing, then please leave it a like and a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And if you're feeling generous, you can always leave us a super thanks. We greatly appreciate all the support that you give this channel. So the next thing that we're going to do is install the casters on the bottom frame, and I've got 6 casters, 1 at each corner and then 2 in the middle. I'm going to take and place these casters 1/2 inch from the edge of the bottom frame, And then I'm going to pre-drill, punch and pre-drill the 4-hole locations, and then shoot in some screws and some washers, and we'll go ahead and mount all 6 casters on the bottom of the frame. And just like any kid from the early 80s, you know I'm going to take it out for a test ride. So before we can assemble the pieces, I do need to make some modifications to a couple of the pieces. Also going to have to drill out some pocket holes. So I'm taking the vertical dividers, which measure 9 inches wide by 23 inches long. And then I measured up from the bottom 12 3/8 inches and marked a line. And then I measured over 4 inches and made a mark. And then I connected the mark, and this is the angle that I'm going to cut my vertical dividers on. And then I just took an angle finder to find out what that angle was. Then with my digital angle finder set at 0 degrees, as you can see, our angle is 25 degrees. So my primary miter saw I've got set up as a 0 clearance 90-degree miter saw. So whenever I'm cutting angles, I just break out this other DeWalt miter saw. And I've just got it sitting here on my outfeed table. And what I've done is I've went ahead and set the miter saw to make a 25-degree cut. And then I've also got a stop set up against the fence. So then I can take the vertical divider, place it up here, and make the angled cut that I need. And then I'll just repeat that process for all 5 vertical dividers. So the next thing we're going to do is cut some dados in our back panel, and this is where our shelves are going to land and fit in that dado. Now we're using 3/4 inch plywood, but 3/4 inch isn't 3/4 inch. It's actually 23/32. So I've got a dado stack set up here at the table saw with shims that makes an exact 23/32 wide cut. And I've got the blade height set to 3/8 of an inch. And that's what we're going to cut our dados at. And we're going to cut 4 dados into the back panel, one at the very top, and then just every foot down the back panel, we're going to cut a dado for the corresponding shelves to fit into. So that's what we're going to do next here at the table saw. So here are the 4 dados that have been cut into the back panel, and I've spaced them at 12-inch increments all the way up the back panel. And this dado here at the very edge of the top of the back panel is, I guess, technically considered a rabbet instead of a dado. But when it's all said and done, this is what you should have. Basically just 4 grooves in the back of the panel for our 4 shelves. So here at the table saw, I'm going to set up my digital angle finder. I've got it zeroed out here on top of the table saw. And then I've got my blade set at 6 degrees. Now I have a right tilt blade. So it is set at 84 degrees. So the next thing I'm going to do is take all my shelf pieces and then go ahead and rip the 6 degree angle on the long side of the shelves. Again, I'm not trimming anything off the original width of the shelves. I'm basically just cutting the 6 degree angle on the long side of the shelves. Now with the 6 degree angle cut on the long end of one side of the shelves, I'm going to come over here to the miter saw with it set up at 6 degrees and cut a 6 degree edge or bevel on the ends, on both the tops and bottom ends of the vertical rails. And again, this is going to be on both ends, the top and bottom. I've got a stop set up, so I'm not cutting anything off the length of the rail. I'm just cutting a 6 degree bevel on both the ends and bottoms. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my vertical dividers. I've got 5 vertical dividers, and I'm going to drill some pocket holes along the bottom and along the back of the vertical dividers. And that's how we'll fasten the vertical dividers to the base of the storage bin and also to the back panel of the storage bin. Next, I'm going to take and drill 2 pocket holes on just the bottom of the vertical rails, and there's 4 vertical rails. And again, I'm just drilling 2 pocket holes just on the bottom side. Okay, and the last thing we need to do is drill some pocket holes along the bottom of the vertical panel or back panel. And it's a little hard to do because this piece is so big. I think it's about 4 feet by 6 feet. So I'm just going to use my single pocket hole jig here and just drill single pocket holes all the way down. And again, this is the back panel, and we're going to be drilling them on the bottom edge of the back panel. And also I'm drilling them on the inside of the back panel where we have the dados, where we previously cut in our dados. That way they won't be as visible. So it's finally to start the assembly process, and what I've done is I've taken the back panel, I flipped it over so the dados are on the back side of the panel, and then the rabbet is at the top. This is the bottom of the back side, and then I'm taking 2 of our vertical dividers, and I'm just going to put it on the very edge of the back panel, and right there at the very bottom, we're going to put some Titebond 2 glue in our joint, and then we're going to clamp it down and then make our joint with the pocket hole screws, 1 1/4 inch pocket hole screws. We're going to do that for both ends of the back panel, and then we'll be able to install the back panel onto the base. Now with the 2 vertical dividers mounted on each end of the back panel, I'm now going to run a bead of glue along the bottom of the vertical dividers and along the bottom of the back panel, and then I'm going to sit that to the base, and then we'll go in and pocket hole screw the vertical dividers into the base. and then we'll set up our individual dividers, and then finally we'll screw in the back panel. But I'll go over that more detail when I get it set up on the base. So for right now, I'm just going to run a bead of glue along the bottom and then get it set on the base and fasten it just with the vertical dividers on each end. So for these next set of, I call them, inside vertical dividers, you can equally space them, or you can offset them and have a bigger space, medium, and then a small as you go down. It's strictly personal preference. I think I'm just going to make them uniform and just make them so it divides out equally. But if you've got wider wood that you want to store, you can make the first compartment a little bit wider, then your middle compartment more of a medium size, and then your far end more of a smaller size. So it's strictly up to you. So the next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and make sure that the inside vertical dividers are square, and go ahead and fasten those to the bottom. And then the reason why I did not fasten the back plate to the base yet, because when we install the pocket screws along the back of the vertical divider will pull in the back panel and make it flush with the vertical divider. So once we do that all the way down, then I'll go on the back side of the back panel and screw in those 1 1/4 pocket hole screws down along the bottom of the back panel. Now with the bin set on its side, we're going to attach the front skirt on this side of the storage bin. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run a bead of glue around everything, set the front skirt on, and then using 1.5 inch brad nails, I'm just going to temporarily use that as a clamp to clamp the front skirt onto this side. Once I get it brad nailed in and I know that the glue's setting up, then I'll come back and pre-drill and drill some 1 1/4 inch GRK screws around the vertical dividers and along the base. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is put the top shelf in the rabbet that's on the back panel. And as you recall, we cut one long end of the top shelf at a 6-degree angle. So the 90-degree angle is what's next to the back panel. This is the 6-degree angle with the short angle, the short side of the angle at the top, the long side of the angle here at the bottom. I just have it clamped up here temporarily, but I'm going to take and run a bead of glue, shoot a couple of brads on the back panel just to hold it in place, and then come in and drill some 1 1/4 inch screws along the back side. So now with the top shelf or the top screwed in, I've went ahead and plumbed. Let me zoom in and let you see. So I've went ahead and just put a torpedo level up there, made sure that it was plumb. I used a piece of scrap wood here and just wedged it in there until I got the top level. And then down at the bottom, I measured over from the end 10 7/8 inches and then put this positive stop. And again, this is just clamped on. Put this positive stop here so I'll know where the bottom of my vertical rail needs to be, which will give me the proper width shelves all the way up. And now what I'm going to do is mark the back side of the vertical rail, and then I'll cut it to fit exactly. And then I'll take and put this under the top shelf and then screw it from the top and apply a little glue here. So I'm going to do that next. So now with all our vertical rails cut perfect to size, I'm going to take and put a little glue here at the top, do the same thing at the bottom, and then I'm going to just take and pre-drill and countersink some 1 1/4 inch screws into the top, and then down at the bottom As we showed earlier, I went ahead and drilled 2 pocket holes down here at the bottom with our positive stop set up on the very bottom panel. I'll take and use the positive stop to hold the rail in position, and then I'll shoot 2 pocket hole screws into the bottom of the rails. And again, just drill some 1 1/4, 1.5 GRK screws into the top here. Okay, now that I have the vertical rails, all 4 vertical rails installed, and I just laid those out on 2-foot centers. So you've got the left end or right end, left end, and then I measured over 2 foot, 2 foot, and put the 2 middle rails in. So now I'm going to start putting in the shelves, and just like you'd seen, I'm going to start at the bottom. And again, on these shelves, we cut one side at 90 degrees, and then we cut one long end at 6 degrees. And just like with the rails, we're going to have the 6-degree end on the outside of the shelf here, and the short end is going to be at the top. The long end of the angle is going to be at the bottom. I'm going to slide them in the dados. I'm going to take this one out, put some glue in it, slide it back in, tack it in with brad nails on the back side, and then we'll countersink and pre-drill some 1.5 or 1 1/4 GRK screws. And then on the front, we'll do the same thing. We'll just pre-drill and countersink 2 1.5 GRK screws along the front rails. And then we'll just repeat the process for the 2 middle shelves. Now the last thing we have to do is just attach the front skirt, and what I'm going to do is just run a bead of glue along the bottom of the base here. I'm actually going to put it on the actual skirt itself, and then I'll take and tack it down with some brad nails, and then like we did before, come back, countersink, and screw in some 1.5 GRK screws. So here's the finished storage bin. This is the front side of the bin with the evenly divided vertical dividers. And as I had mentioned, you could compartmentalize these dividers, make them larger on one end and then smaller on the opposite end. I just chose to keep them uniform. And then on the back side, this is where your sheet goods, as far as half sheets, full sheets of plywood can be stored. And then you have the 3 middle shelves or 4 middle shelf compartments, again, where you can put cutoffs. You could actually store hardwoods here as well. This doesn't have to be dedicated just for plywood storage. This could be a combination of both plywood and hardwood storage. And again, it's on casters, so it's easy to move around the workshop, and things aren't just thrown in the corner like they have been in the past. I actually mean thrown in the corner like this, but we're about to correct that situation here shortly, and you'll get to witness it. Well, that's going to end this video. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, then please leave it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel and you like DIY and woodworking projects, then I highly recommend that you smash that subscribe button. It's free and painless, and I also ask that you ring that bell icon. That way you'll be notified of all our upcoming videos. To all my existing subscribers, I really appreciate all the support you've given this channel. I'll leave links in the video description below to where you can pick up any tools and equipments that I used on this build. Until next time, I'm Rick with the Ingrain Workshop. Have a wonderful day, and God bless.